Hi, this is David Unsworth, English editor of the PanAm Post. Today we'll be speaking with PanAm Post reporter Marcelo Duclos, who is based out of Buenos Aires. This weekend, Argentina held much anticipated congressional elections in which Cristina Kirchner's new political movement squared off against the Cambiemos coalition of current center-right President Mauricio Macri. Macri's coalition did better than expected, a showing that was cheered by markets and investors. Marcelo, thank you for being with us today.
Hello, it's my pleasure. How are you?
Good. So to begin with, why don't you give us a rundown of the various parties we're talking about here? There were basically four major political alliances competing in these elections. Is that right?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's necessary to explain that actually no one was elected this weekend because we're talking about a primary. So
Sure.
This is a little bit confusing, but not only for the people abroad, but also with the people in Argentina. I'm afraid to say that most of the people here, even in Buenos Aires, that it's supposed to be the most the people more interested into
Politically savvy.
Election related with the results and the political parties. Most of them have no idea why they're voting for something and then going to repeat in October. So 10 years ago, when Cristina Kirchner was in government, they implemented something that they called PASO. PASO, it's like an open primary when all the parties go the same day in a mandatory election. In Argentina, the going to vote is mandatory. It's not an option like in other countries. Here, it's compulsory. And the parties or the different alliance who has to offer more than an option, you can pick one of the candidates, and the other fronts that already has only one candidate, they're going with the same list right now in August than in October. What is confusing is that here in Argentina, the most important fronts, as you said, they choose to not to have an internal competition. So actually, the same proposal with the same candidates are going to repeat the election in October. I think that's something to put clear. And as you said, you have this is the first time that Cambiemos is the coalition for Mauricio Macri. It's integrated with one of the major parties. I'm talking about in a sense that it's one of the oldest parties in Argentina. It's UCR, Unión Cívica Radical. It's called the Radicalismo. Like the other parties, the Peronism, el Partido Justicialista. Radicalism is as one old party from Argentina with huge structure in the provinces. Propuesta Republicana is the party, Mauricio Macri party, and Coalición Cívica, deputy Elisa Carrió, she was the candidate in the city, in Buenos Aires. It was the first time that Cambiemos was asking to the people how they're doing, because Macri was elected 2 years ago, and this midterm election is the first time that they have a really clue about how the people is feeling about the government.
Now, Marcelo, will you fill us in here? One of the biggest stories out of this election, this primary election, is that Cristina Kirchner had a falling out with the Justicialista party, and she launched her own political movement. So can you tell us about what happened there, why she did that, and what are the implications for?
She wanted to be the only candidate because this is a personal feeling. I'm not. I mean, she's the only one who knows the reality about this. But maybe she was afraid that if she was going to compete with an internal with another candidate, Partido justicialista, that is the classic Peronism, already had one candidate who was Florencio Randazzo, former minister of Cristina. And maybe one of the theories about this situation is that Cristina was afraid to compete with another Peronist because she might
lose
a lot of people, not from the Peronism, but I mean, the primary is open for everyone, and she was afraid that most of the people against Cristina Kirchner and her government might vote in that primary just to complicate her chances. I mean,
right.
I can't say why she's doing this, but that would be one.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. She basically her strategy was, I want to take the path of least resistance to guarantee that I will get a seat in the Senate. And there's speculation that it involves immunity from criminal prosecution. She's under indictment in a corruption probe, correct?
That's right. She needs to be in the Congress. I can say for sure if she's going to run in October, because her situation with the justice is really complicated with a lot of different procedures. So I mean, jail can be one destiny for Kirchner. Also, you have another theory that says that Macri is not interested to have Cristina Kirchner in prison, because if she is free and competing in the election, she might be the one who splits the opposition. And
exactly.
That will be something interesting with
now,
Macri. And actually, that happened this weekend.
Oh, sure.
Macri is not facing a united Peronist opposition, because the half of the party is aware that it's impossible to find in Cristina some survivor in the future, because most of the people in the country, they're really not interested to have Cristina Kirchner back in power. So the Peronism need a new face, need a new leader, but she's refusing to retire from the politics. So actually, that situation it's something really good for Macri.
Yes.
He's in government and he's not facing one solid united opposition.
So the bottom line here for our English audience who may not know a lot about Argentine politics is that Macri, with a divided opposition, with Cristina Kirchner abandoning the traditional Justicialista party, which is also a Peronista party, Macri has an easier task of getting a congressional coalition together that can work with his agenda. Now, one other person I wanted to ask you about. Tell us about this Sergio Massa. Sergio Massa is, would you say he's kind of a centrist? He's a centrist Peronista?
Sorry, I'm not hearing you. I lost you.
I'm saying, what? Tell us about Sergio Massa's role in this election.
Sergio Massa also it's one. Let me put one more detail if we're talking about Peronismo. Cristina officially left the party, and the party got only 6 points with Florencio Randazzo. But the funniest thing is that, for example, the president for Partido Justicialista, for Peronism in the provinces, was playing with Cristina. So it's a complete bizarre situation that officially the party is presenting one candidate, but also the authorities belong to Cristina's new front. It's called Unidad Ciudadana. So it's pretty bizarre. And Sergio Massa, who was also a member for Nestor and Cristina government maybe 6-7 years ago, he also found a new party, and he was also interested in became one of the future leaders of Peronism. So with a party of his own, he went to the province to compete for the Senate, but the election turns not good for him because he only got 15%, and in the Senate for each provinces you have 2 seats for the first party and only 1 for the second. So as Cristina Kirchner and Esteban Bullrich from Cambiemos, each of them got 34%, and Sergio Massa, who was the third, he got less than the half for the other 2. So it's really complicated to convince the people that they found a real option with him, because as I said before, there's only 3 seats, and maybe most of the people are trying to make a useful votes with Cristina or with Cambiemos. So Massa and Randazzo, who was the official candidate for Peronism, I think they're one of the 2 biggest losers for this election.
Now, a couple of logistical questions here. So am I correct in thinking that half of the Senate seats are a third of the Senate seats are up in October, and half of the lower house of Congress seats are up?
That's right.
Now, what is the best outcome here for Macri with that number of seats up? Does Macri have enough seats in play that he could potentially win a majority in the Argentine Congress?
No, the majority is not an option, but he for sure will increase the number of seats that he has right now.
Now, is someone like Sergio Massa prepared to work with Macri? I think of Massa as kind of in the middle, like kind of a political centrist. Is he part of the Macri coalition, or is he opposed to Macri?
No, it's funny because if you ask someone of the government, it would say that Massa is a guy from opposition. But if you ask someone from Kirchnerism, they would say that Massa is part of the government, because actually Massa was the guy who permit the government to get a few essential laws when Macri began his government. His strategy was, Argentina faces a real division, internal division with the people from Kirchnerism and against Kirchnerism. Massa is trying to find what he called the middle avenue. He thought that it would be a good idea trying to talk to the people that actually they're not hating Cristina or Macri, the people in the middle. And the results for the election shows that actually most of the people are related with Cristina or against Cristina. So right. Massa a few times gave the votes to Macri to get a few essential laws in the beginning of the government, and of course playing as in opposition with some others. But as I said before, no one will get a majority, and Macri might find a way to increase the number of deputies and the Senate, and also give another more strong possibility to negotiate.
So Macri has been... Macri is a center-right, free market reformer type leader. He's done a lot with regard to bringing Argentina back into global credit markets, eliminating currency controls, agricultural subsidies. He's eliminated subsidies for utilities like electricity and gas and water.
I'm not sure about that. In comparison of Kirchnerism, he is.
Right.
But for example, when we have discussion about just to give you an idea,
sure.
We have this Aerolíneas Argentinas that is the monopoly for if you want to fly within the country. You have these government agents, and for example, the government is refused to give an open competition for this. If you want to import something, it's really complicated. If you want to export, you still have a huge amount of taxes. So it is a free market guy if you compare it with this totally nonsense of Cristina, who was related to more style related with Chavez, Maduro, and Venezuela. So, but there's no other politician who will propose to go further in this direction. I mean, we can say he's the most free market defender in Argentina, but of course, not enough for me. But let's make this very, 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 very clear. They're publicly will never support these ideas, and they always claiming about the importance of the government, that the market is not a very good mechanism to settle the strings for the economy. So he will be considered a free market guy if
by comparison.
With the rest.
By comparison with the other candidates. Now, what are the most important pieces of domestic legislation that he needs to work with Congress to enact? Obviously, inflation is a very serious problem in Argentina. What are the big economic proposals that Macri is trying to push through Congress?
Actually, I think he knows what it needs to be done, but till this point, he thought that his chances in the Congress were not enough to even to propose these few items. Argentina needs urgently to reduce the deficit. I mean, our inflation was reduced by the half, which is good, but we're still around the 20% per year. So the path is good, but the situation it's complicated. But to solve, for example, the problem of inflation, you need to cut the deficit. And to cut the deficit, you need to cut the government spending. And the criticism of the opposition is that Macri is already doing this, and actually he's not. So that will be the most important thing to solve this problem for the inflation, but also to get more invest, because we still have a huge amount of people that they're not working, they're getting money from the government, and if you don't solve these government counts and if you don't cut the deficit, you will continue with this inflation,
right?
And this lack of investment.
The American left, the Latin American left is always one of their, whipping boys, if you will, is always austerity measures. But if you look at, for example, just to move to Ecuador real quickly, if you look what's going on in Ecuador, Rafael Correa spent way too much money he didn't have on all kinds of social programs and infrastructure and transportation, but he left a huge pile of debt on the lap of Lenin Moreno, and now they're having a big fight in public over this. So what the left in Argentina, I'm sure, is always going to say, oh, the government's not doing enough, the government needs to be more involved in the economy. What can someone who's a free market reformer do to combat that kind of thinking?
I think the first that Macri needs to get solved is, maybe it's not a political issue, maybe not an economical issue, but a cultural issue. I think here in Argentina you need to explain really clear that the money, there's now nothing. Most of the people unfortunately think that these things came from the thin air, that the subsidies and these salaries and the previous government used the government, the state, to hire the people that were supposed to support the government. So the situation is really complicated. When Macri got into government and he tried to fire a few of these guys, the demonstration were huge. They're saying that we're living political discrimination and persecution. So the situation it's really complicated, and the deficit it's heavy. So right now Macri couldn't reduce the deficit, but he changed the monetary inflation with the external debt. So that is also a danger in the mid and in the long term. So that will be to reduce the deficit will be one of the most important things that Macri needs to be done. And the other one, I think, it will be to get a reform to reduce taxes in the labor legislation. Because right now, if you have a small company, if you want to hire a guy, for each peso that you pay to your work, actually you need to pay another one to the government and another one to the union. So, even that it costs you a fortune when the guy who's working with you is not getting the money. If you have some problem and you need to fire one of two guys in a company that maybe we're talking about 20, 25 employees, and you need to fire maybe 2 or 3 of them, you will get some troubles with the justice and the money that you need to pay them. It might have you to close your shop.
Yeah, right. It's a very
is
inflexible labor market. I mean, we've seen these kinds of labor reforms even the socialist government in France has admitted, we need to reform these dated, anachronistic labor markets that really harken back to 2 generations ago. We've been speaking with reporter Marcelo Duclos about the Argentine congressional primary elections that are taking place in advance of final elections that will be held in October of this year. Marcelo, thank you so much for being with us today, and we'd love to have you back in October to talk about the final election results.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a very different result, but maybe what's happened in the provinces with Cristina might maybe Macri is going to have good news again in October, and let's wait for these reforms that actually it's very, very needed if we want to get through this century of bad ideas in our political and economies here in Argentina.
Sure. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.